patient is on life support for 10 years, they're considered to be alive. We would not call it, from what I've found, we would not call that death at all. The question is, do we allow the person to die or not? That is the question. Now, if the medical experts were to say that this person cannot sustain life on their own accord, and there will be no improvement, then that would be a serious consideration. And that may result in permitting withdrawal of the respiratory or the life support system. But under no circumstances will we call the person as a dead person.
Assalamu alaikum. I just need a clarification. I understand about organ transplants when it's a life and death situation. But I'm faced with a situation that is not life and death. And what I'm getting at is that when we take out teeth, we sometimes put implants in people's body. If there is not enough bone, we have three choices. Either you use synthetic bone, which is not very good, cow bone or pig bone, or the other one is human bone from a dead person. Same thing with the skin. If you don't have enough skin to cover that implant, we use human skin. There are two parts to this. One, are we allowed to do that? As a dentist, am I allowed to do that? Islamic, am I doing something wrong? The second part is this wrong from a patient's perspective, from Islamic, to receive human bone from somebody dead? It's not a life and death situation.
It seems perfectly fine.
Assalamu alaikum. My question alludes to the ethical dilemma precluding euthanasia or the use of any machinery or medical devices that prolong life, and allowing a person to actually live without those mechanisms if they choose to. Is there any sort of framework or guideline that may help us arrive at these decisions, noting that somebody's life may not improve if they were on a respirator or any other medical devices?
What you're saying is that if a patient doesn't want these high tech and wants to go on without those high tech, is that allowed? Of course, there is another determination we make that if, for example, the use of those high tech will give a better quality of life, then what happens? Does he want to take that, or doesn't he want to take that?
Assuming under the circumstance that there would be no improvement in one's quality of life with the machinery, the instance being an elderly person who is near death, the use of such machinery would just be prolonging life. Can the decision be made to not even have those mechanisms available to them? Are they allowed to die a quote-unquote natural death?
I think in our daily life we see that actually there are many patients who will refuse because they feel that they want that quality of life that they're happy with, rather than sort of go on to this high tech and actually create more of a problem for themselves.
Is that somewhat of a contradictory to Islamic thought, where one is supposed to prolong their life?
Being not a sheikh, I don't think so, but what do you say?
Perhaps Shaykh Arif, if you could comment on that.
This is an important question, and of course it requires proper answers. The only thing is, at times we don't have accurate answers, but it seems very much that if a person wishes to maintain a quality of life and die a dignified death, that they would be allowed to do so. Having said that, there's a problem. What if they, in their understanding of what is quality of life are mistaken. Here, should we therefore take a decision on their behalf or ask and consult the medical experts? It would seem reasonable, and our ulama are going down that route, that the medical experts should be consulted, and in line with their professional opinion, the decision should be taken. For example, if the opinion is that the quality of life will improve, or with minimum support the life will be prolonged naturally, then obviously the patient should not be allowed, yes, to not have those means available to them.
Assalamu alaikum. Because most of the juridical opinions is the product of human insights, so it may, in a sense, be deficient entirely. Is there a movement which would validate that? Because there's an error term; these are likely to be incorrect or not entirely correct. That we can make the medical opinion not just a consideration. That it, in fact, it supersedes whatever the juridical inference or the inference as a result of a Muslim scholar, that it supersedes that in certain circumstances. So we don't have to continually go back and forth and have the Muslim opinion validate the medical opinion.
Yes, give a brief reply, then you can take it on. This is the trend, actually, that the scholars do not define concepts for us. They have to refer to experts in that field for definitions, and then they determine the law through those concepts which have been determined for them and defined for them. The problem is, though, that the medical profession does not have decisive answers. This is the problem, you see, at times. And hence their opinions are prone to be mistaken. And here we find that maybe at times need for clear-cut judicial guidelines and black and white is necessary. Well, then you will find that it changes from doctor to doctor, and as our understanding of life and death changes. For example, as Dr. said a little while ago, in the 60s, death was defined as the heart stopping or the lungs not functioning. And now the death definition is based more on the activity of the brain. Now, if the heart stops beating, and if brain dead is considered the real death, then the medical profession would say keep the heart beating. We can opt for a heart transplant, or until medical breakthroughs are made in which this heart can be made to function by itself, and there's a possibility that that person who in 1960s would have been pronounced as dead, in 2010 will most likely in future will wake up and lead a normal life. This is the danger with medical opinions, because they're changing.
Well, exactly. I was just going to emphasize this fact that the definition changes as the technology change. And there was this case when the Harvard medical definition came into existence, where the brain functioning definition came, Missouri accepted it, or is it Kansas accepted it, and Missouri did not accept it. So we have two definitions of death in one country. That's one. Secondly, suppose if we were to go down your route, and the medical opinion firmly believes that lack of consciousness, prolonged lack of consciousness constitute death, instead of the brainstem death which controls the heart and the breathing. This is a higher functioning of brain death now. You see, we're talking about consciousness. Suppose we arrive at that decision. I said, I don't think the Islamic jurist will allow that definition of death. Or, for example, as a society, we come to, and God forbid that we don't, but suppose we come to an understanding that a patient who suffers from dementia doesn't have any idea what she is about, and that constitutes, for all purposes, death. Just suppose. I'm sure it won't come, but suppose. So you see, we go down that route, and we don't want to go down that route. So in a way, in many ways, whilst Islamic scholars depend upon the medical experts on the definition, they still have a final control of defining what to do. And in a way, that is a good thing. That is a good thing. Did we answer your question?
Okay, we have one more question from the ladies' side. It says, pre-termination of pregnancy is an issue which is very salient in public health since Roe versus Wade. What is the Islamic perspective on this, especially in dealing with questions of pregnancy due to rape or violence?
What was the first part of the question?
It says, pre-termination of pregnancy is an issue which is very salient in public health since Roe versus Wade.
My take is, as far as it goes, and I'm not a sheikh, is this, that all the Islamic literature, so far at least, do say that termination on that basis is not allowed. But you can expand on that.
Children born through rape are not considered as illegitimate children according to Islamic literature, and termination of pregnancy is absolutely not allowed. However, recently Ayatollah Sana'i has in his rulings stated, and it's a consideration for the others now to think about, that law of autonomy should allow the woman to terminate pregnancy if it had not been for the emphatic texts that state otherwise. And since we have these texts, we will have to conclude that termination of pregnancy is absolutely prohibited. They override the law of autonomy. However, prior to the emergence of the soul, which is at the 4-month stage, if due to problems that the woman may encounter, whether medical, psychological, social, and it is difficult for her to bear the child and give birth, then prior to 4 months, they may abort for reasons less than those that are life-threatening. However, it should not be taken lightly. It should be for genuine reasons, like maybe rape, or people who are psychologically incapable of bearing children. But after the emergence of the soul, which is at the level of 4 months, it's an absolute prohibition, unless it's a case of life and death, in which case the life of the mother will be given priority.
Ahsantum on your presentation. Sheikh, I have a question. After the symposium or after the conference that you've been to, has there any amendment to Sayyid Sistani's fatwa regarding the brain death, which is previously it was obvious that if a patient who was brain dead, you're not allowed to withdraw medical support. Has been there any changes? That's number one. If I've or any of the doctors has switched or withdrawn any medical treatments or support to a patient that we thought that he's dead, but according to Sistani's fatwa, he's not. If that patient is Muslim or not Muslim, in each case, what's my liability? Have I killed somebody, or do I need to pay diya? And what do I need to do from now? And finally, can I carry a card to say that I'm going to donate my organs to non-Muslims, or
You
not?
can actually put on the card to non-Muslims specifically.
I mean, like being in Canada or being in.
I'm just. You can take this one. As far as I know, there is no change in the ruling that Ayatollah Sistani may have given, although I wasn't aware that he had given this ruling, but it was something that we had concluded during that conference, that potentiality for reason is sufficient to deem a person alive, and we must, as far as possible, keep them alive. 1. 2, you are here working in a particular understanding of ethics and medical ethics. If the people who have the right to make a decision were to tell you to withdraw the life support system, then you are only acting in accordance with their will. So you're not committing a crime or a sin. Now this is in terms of people who are not Muslims. Now what about the Muslims? Now here is a bit of a problem, that on the one hand you would say, well, Islam does not allow me. But on the other hand, the system through which people wish to abide overrides this. It seems at the first glance that you would be allowed to do that without sin or blame. But maybe the best course of action is to explain to those Muslims that this is the Islamic understanding. But then if they decide to do something, then you are not seen as somebody who is killing. And if you want to be cautious, then maybe you can opt out and not switch off the machinery or withdraw it and ask somebody else to do it.
Okay, if it's okay with our panel and all the attendees, we can take 2 more questions and then close. Yeah, okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. So there is one question, this after seeing the people on the life support, how the family have to suffer when they are on the life support, and only few come out of the life support. So can we make a wasiyat this, if there is something happen like heart failure or a very, very serious heart failure, this, we don't want to go on the life support. If the God willing, we can come back of this illness, or not to put on the life support and going on the natural death.
The problem is not with making the wasiyah. The problem is the executors of the wasiyah may not be allowed to honor the wasiyah. They may be obliged to put their father or their dear ones on life support in the hope that they would pull through.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Arif. My question was just the brother asked, but is this wasiyah allowable? Like, if, God forbid, this situation happens to anyone, but would this be like, remember in the beginning you said that guilt that we may carry, God forbid, this wasiyah may help avoid that guilt, and is this allowable?
Well, the thing is, the wasiyah should be made in accordance with what the understanding of right and wrong may be. So at most what you can do is to say, if it is allowed for me to die, then let me die. If it is not, then you know your duties. Yes? And I hope by that time we get some clear-cut answers and disclosure on the issue. Oh yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you were in Iran, yes, you would be allowed to do that. In this country, we will need to refer to the mujtahideen. Now, obviously, it doesn't make sense to say, well, I can take their organs and they can't take my organs. What I'm trying to say is that since our structure is such that the mujtahid responds, the safest course of action is to ask the mujtahid in terms of the parameters of what is allowed and what is not allowed. The state of Iran has allowed it totally. But it is the responsibility of an individual to seek clarity from the jurists that they deem to be the most competent.
I wasn't going to ask a second question, but just wanted to give some information. One, in Ontario, there is something called power of attorney, that whereby you can say how you are to be treated in certain circumstances, which is called, people call it the living will. In my case, what I've said is that if in case this happens to me, Dr. Hussain Khimji will make a decision what is to be done. With respect to the other question about the organ donation, organs not being donated to the, not given to non-Muslims, according to Ayatollah Sistani. I wrote a letter to him and he has responded, and somebody who understands Farsi translated for me. And according to that, Ayatollah Sistani said, because I basically disagreed with what he was saying. So he has said that if it is in my will, and if the organ is being removed while I'm still alive, the organ can be given to anyone unless I've put a restriction. So basically, I can donate my organs to non-Muslims.
But that's when you're still alive.
Basically, brain. That means I'm not brain dead, right?
But then, by the removal of organs, you definitely will be dying.
Yes, I'll be dead. I mean, this is what Dr.
Isn't this murder?
No, this is what Dr. Sibtain was saying. But what the argument you are presenting is that I can never donate an organ. I'm talking just about the part about donating it to non-Muslims. Now, if I'm doing it while I'm still...
the basis of the law, therefore, seems to be that while you're alive, you have autonomy.
Yeah.
You can give any part of yourself to anybody else.
Why that?
Because you may be like, but once you're dead, then the principles override.
Yeah, then you can't donate anywhere, right? The organs are dead. But as long as I'm brain alive, I can I'm still alive, right? It's that rest of my body is dead, it's my brain is alive, so I'm still alive. Right?
But if you're alive, you can't donate. I mean, if you donate, you're going to kill yourself, and that means there is a murder.
But then what were you saying about the brain? The organs are taken away, taken while you're still.
I was presenting a paradox. What I was presenting was this: that we have a paradox. If we have, I think I ought to make this clear. I ought to make this clear. We were talking about a paradox, that we have on one hand, we need to have a biologically healthy organs. And on the other hand, we need to take those organs when the patient is dead. Now, the thing is that if a patient dies, a few hours later, the organs are not useful to be transplanted. And so there is this paradox about death and then transplantation. If you take the organs and you kill the person, then you're effectively murdering the person. But if you decide that this person is already dead, then you can. Now, Islamically, you may not be able to decide that this patient is dead the way you are describing. You're still alive.
Yeah, he's alive. But
Yeah.
okay, I'm a little bit confused. The two of you are saying something that on the one hand, the ulama are saying will follow medical advice. So the medical, I'm just saying my interpretation, my understanding of Ayatollah Sistani's change of opinion. He had said earlier that you can only donate to Muslims. All I'm saying is that he changed his opinion from saying donating to Muslims that you can donate to non-Muslims provided the person is still alive. So
you see, then there has to be certain qualification that you can only donate those organs which would not affect the quality of your life, presuming if you were still alive. So you can't donate your heart. One of the kidneys, not both. But that comes under a different law, therefore. It's nothing to do with the question we are asking. We are asking if a person, subsequent to their death, are their organs, can they be given to non-Muslims? That question has not been answered still. We are still talking about a living person exercising the right of autonomy and giving their organs. So you see, that's a different. It's a different area of judicial reasoning, not the one that we've asked.
Today's topic was a very interesting topic in the sense that you posed a lot of questions when you did the deliberation. My question to Shaykh Arif, and he also did in his lecture say that there is a dilemma in today's, due to, we are facing dilemma in determining on medical terms as well as Sharia. My question is there on a higher level, ulama level, that on a discussion is going on this matter as the clear-cut definition or answers to these questions?
Deliberations are continuous. They are seeking clarity from medics, from experts of bioethics, from various different sources. But the deliberations cannot be expected to be completed within a day or two. It's an ongoing process. So it takes time, and as we are going ahead in time, we are finding that these sort of deliberations are influencing the ulama's thinking, and as a result, we find differences and changes in their opinions. From a time where organ donation was not allowed per se to Muslim and non-Muslim, to a time where some are allowing it for Muslims, and countries like Iran are allowing it unrestrictedly without any conditions of blood money or consent of the inheritors and so on and so forth. So we can see how it's influencing it.
I think
Donate the moon to Mars.
Right.
Organ donation.
I think we have to do thesis on that. You posed a very interesting question. I think the problem is that we have got scientific advancement. And what's happening is that scientific advancement is prolonging the dying process. The event of death occurs afterwards, but the dying process. And as the dying process lengthened like this, issues arises which are very difficult issues to deal with. And scientific advancement is so fast that issues arise and then it has to be deliberated by the Islamic scholars. So this is the problem, the scientific advancement extending the dying process, and then we find that there are these issues of when a patient is dead. So this is the problem, and we are relying upon the scientists, or rather the Islamic scholars are relying upon the scientists to explain what is happening in this situation for a ruling on a principle basis is made by the Islamic scholars. So you pose an interesting question, and it's not the weakness of the Islamic scholars in any way. Well, they differ. They differ because they may be using different principles to arrive at a problem. And that diversity is a good thing. But what is important is that at least if Islam has to be relevant, then Islam has to provide answers to these issues that are coming up. And if we don't go away with anything, if we go away with this, that Islam is there to provide answers within frameworks, then at least that's a good thing for us because it is relevant for us.
Okay, we'll have one last question before we end up today's proceedings.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a comment and then a question. We discussed in regards to a couple of your illustrations, you showed pictures of half human, half animal. And currently in the world, we have world leaders that have animalistic behavior. So what's the difference between physical and mental anyways? So that's just a comment there. The second part is a question we've been talking about, organ donation. The next evolution in transplant, it's already happening, in fact, is computer-based or chip-based or mechanical-based. So where is that going to? Like, are we stopping at human organ donation or animal to human, or is the next evolution going to be from technology to human, like for example, half human, half cyber mechanism or whatever?
Are we in the 3rd century? The comments, obviously, animalistic instincts and all that sort of thing is within all of us, not necessarily exclusive to leaders. But to your question about donations, mechanical computer-based replacement of organs and all that, provided it is beneficial, I would not have thought that the Islamic scholars would in any way ban that or make it haram. I would have thought that anything that progresses humanity to allow its perfection to occur, perhaps that would be a good basis of allowing permission. I don't know what the Sheikh's analysis or take would be.
Is this the final comment? I think so. Well, if artificial intelligence is to be realized, I think we need consent from the donor, whether it's a human or a robot. Of course, if the artificially intelligent being is a Muslim,